If you ask a bunch of roof mechanics what they like best about their jobs, you'll probably hear that they like being part of a team and sharing the responsibility for getting the job done right. And I'll tell you, it's a great feeling. And part of getting the job done right is doing it safely. Roofing is a great profession in a lot of ways. It's a real kick to drive around town and see buildings that you've worked on. And there aren't too many careers left where all you need to get ahead is hard work, desire, and common sense. However, roofing carries its fair share of hazards. Falls, burns, back and eye injuries, exposure to hazardous chemicals. Those are some of the dangers you'll have to be prepared to deal with. And most important, you're the one who has to take safety information to heart. Remember, you're part of a team up there. What you do affects everyone else on the roof. You owe it to yourself and your coworkers to make safety part of the job all day, every day. It's that simple. Keep in mind that this program is an overview. It can't possibly cover everything you need to know about safety because each type of roof system has its own materials, equipment, and safety precautions. But no need to worry, because throughout NRCA's Roof Application Training Program series, safety is taught as an integral part of the roof installation instruction. So, even with the most unique installation, we'll show you how to do it safely. Also, you'll hear a lot about OSHA. OSHA stands for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It's a government agency that sets safety rules. Your employer is required by law to follow these rules and can be severely fined for not doing so. It's one more reason why it's so important to follow the safety rules your employer gives you. The last thing your employer wants is to lose a good worker to an injury and then possibly get fined by OSHA. There are some general safety practices that you should know about before you ever set foot on a roof. Rules that apply to any type of roofing application for any type of roof system. In parts 1 and 2 of this program, we'll look at 2 of these safety basics: personal protective equipment and fall protection. Protecting yourself from falls and other injuries is a crucial part of every job you do. In part 3, we'll cover basic rules for handling material and equipment safely. And finally, in part 4, we'll give you an overview of the most common safety concerns you're likely to encounter during roofing work. If it seems like we're going to be talking a lot about safety, you're absolutely correct. Roofing may be what you do, but safely is how you do it. You can't separate one from the other. We're going to start our safety training with a look at PPE, or personal protective equipment, from head to toe. Because PPE is your first line of defense against burns and many other injuries. Eye and head injuries are all too common in the roofing trade. You are exposed to many hazards that can hurt your eyes on a roof. Dangers from hot bitumen and chemical splashes, flying nails, and airborne tear-off debris, to name a few. But you can beat the odds by always keeping your goggles or safety glasses close at hand. And keep a hard hat handy whenever there are hazards from above. It should be marked with the ANSI approval. You may notice that throughout every program I always wear this hard hat on the job site, even though others are not. It's simply because we want you to recognize me as the narrator. However, even though OSHA doesn't require you to always wear PPE like a hard hat when there's no overhead danger, it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea to do so anyway. In fact, many employers require it. Check with your supervisor, though, if you're ever unsure. If you're operating a piece of loud equipment like a roof cutter, it's a good idea to protect your hearing, either with foam-type earplugs that go into your ears or earmuffs that go over them. During tear-offs, you may want to wear a face wrap. And for coal tar pitch tear-offs, you can use a special cream for skin protection. There may even be times when you'll need to wear a respirator, most likely a particle mask like this. Now, it can get really hot on the roof. There's no denying it, especially when you're working with hot asphalt. There are times when you'll wish you could roll up your sleeves or work in a t-shirt, but don't give in to that urge. Anytime you're working with a hot material, you need to wear a long sleeve shirt buttoned at the cuff and up to the top button at the neck. That's to prevent hot asphalt or coal tar from splashing onto your skin. Wear pants without cuffs, so hot asphalt or coal tar can't get caught in the cuffs. And make sure your pants are long enough to cover the top of your boots. Protect your hands from burns by wearing gloves with a snug-fitting cuff. Button your shirt cuffs over the gloves to keep hot asphalt or coal tar from getting caught inside. If you're handling chemicals, solvents, or adhesives, you'll need rubber gloves. Another thing, no jewelry. Leave it at home because rings and chains can get caught in equipment or machinery. And finally, protect your feet with boots that cover your ankles and have rubber or composite soles to prevent slipping. Some work may require additional PPE. You'll learn about that when you study the various roof systems. But no matter what type of roof system you're installing, keep in mind that PPE isn't just a suggestion, it's a requirement. Your employer could face stiff fines if OSHA inspectors catch you working without the right PPE. Even more important, you could be seriously injured. That's why it's so important that you always use the required PPE on every roofing job. Remember, PPE, personal protective equipment, is your first line of defense against injuries. PPE includes a hard hat and eye and ear protection where required, a long-sleeved shirt and gloves, long pants without cuffs, and non-slip boots that cover the ankles. Some types of work may require additional PPE. Like PPE, fall protection is another safety basic that applies to every roofing job. There are different fall protection requirements for different types of jobs, including guardrail systems and personal fall arrest systems, safety monitoring systems for use on low-slope roofs only, and slide guards and chicken ladders for use on steep slope roofs. We'll look at these types of fall protection in just a minute. But first, there are a few things you need to know on any roofing job. And one of them is how to set up and use ladders safely. You'd be surprised how many falls take place off ladders. The key to ladder safety is to check ladders out first and set them up and use them correctly. Before using a ladder, check it for broken rungs or cracks in the side rails. And if you find any, don't use the ladder. Tag it out of order and remove it from service. Never use a ladder with grease, oil, or any other slippery substance on the rungs or rails. Set up the ladder so that the distance from the base of the ladder to the base of the wall is 1/4 the distance from the base of the wall to the roof. For example, if the roof height is 8 feet, position the ladder 2 feet away from the base of the wall. Dig in the ladder's base or use non-skid feet. The ladder must be extended at least 3 feet above the roof edge and tied off to a rigid support. It also needs a handrail or other grasping device. Always face the ladder when going up or down, and don't carry anything with you. Keep 3 points, for example 2 feet and 1 hand, in contact with the ladder at all times. All holes in a roof deck larger than 2 inches must be covered and marked, or blocked off with a guardrail. If you have to remove a cover temporarily, let your supervisor know and replace it as soon as you're done. Watch out for electrical hazards. A surprising number of falls are caused by electrical shocks. One of the easiest ways of preventing falls is to keep the job site neat and orderly. Don't leave trash and roofing debris lying around on the roof where someone can trip over them and fall. High winds are another serious fall hazard. If the wind picks up, make sure materials are secure both on the ground and roof. Keep in mind that insulation boards can act as sails on windy days. If the wind becomes excessive, seek shelter immediately. The same is true for other severe weather conditions like lightning, hail, or heavy rain. If your supervisor tells you to come off the roof, don't hesitate. Finally, keep in mind that frost or ice can make roof decks and roof membranes very slippery. You may need to use special fall protection measures under these circumstances. As we mentioned earlier, different types of roofs have different fall protection requirements. On low-slope roofs that are more than 50 feet wide, you have a choice of a guardrail system, a safety net system, a personal fall arrest system, or a combination of a warning line system and a safety monitoring system. Let's take a look at each one. Guardrail systems are one of the most common systems you'll use. Guardrails can be made of a variety of materials, but no matter what they're made of, they must have a top rail that's between 39 and 45 inches high and can withstand a force of at least 200 pounds. Unless the roof has a parapet wall at least 21 inches high, you also need a mid-rail. A mid-rail must be able to withstand a force of 150 pounds. Top rails and mid-rails must be at least a 1/4 inch thick. If they're made of rope, they must be inspected regularly for wear. If they're made of wire rope, they must be flagged every 6 feet. To protect employees working below you from falling objects, you need toe boards on all steep slope roofs and low slope roofs that don't have parapets at least 4 inches high. Guardrails are required at all material handling areas, including hoists, trash chutes, crane landings, and bitumen outlet pipes, and at skylights and other roof openings. They're also required on scaffolds if the scaffold is at least 10 feet high. The scaffold needs just top rails and mid-rails. However, cross-bracing can be used as a mid-rail if it crosses the platform at 21 inches or as a top rail if it crosses between 39 and 45 inches. Roof bracket scaffolds aren't currently regulated under the standard, but roofing slide guards, which are roof jacks with 2x6 planks, are addressed in relation to Subpart M in the interim guidelines for residential fall protection. For more information, see the NRCA video Fall Protection, It's About Time, or Steep Slope Roofing Safety, Don't Let It Slide. If employees are working below the scaffold and it's more than 10 feet high, it needs toe boards as well to prevent tools and other objects from falling. Make sure the scaffold is set up on firm, level ground, and the working level is completely planked. And remember, always use a ladder or stairs to get onto a scaffold. Never climb the cross bracing. Another fall prevention system, though not used very often, is a safety net. It must be able to support a weight of 400 pounds falling from the working surface without letting the net touch the ground. Personal fall arrest systems consist of a full body harness, lanyard, safety line, and anchor point. The safety line is attached to the harness at the center of the back, then the line is attached to an anchor point capable of bearing a force of 5,000 pounds. Your personal fall arrest system must limit the distance you can free fall to 6 feet, and it goes without saying it has to stop you before you hit the ground. Warning line systems can be an effective way to prevent falls, but only if you use them correctly. On roofs that are 50 feet or more wide, the warning line system must always be used together with a safety monitoring system. The warning line system consists of posts strung with wire, rope, or chains. The lines must be between 34 and 39 inches from the roof surface and be flagged every 6 feet. If you're using a warning line system, you have to set up lines along all open sides of the work area. Position the warning lines no less than 6 feet from the roof edge, and be sure to keep the line taut so that if you back up against it, you can feel it. After all, that's the whole point of the warning line, so use your head. If you see this, do something about it. Now, if you're using mechanical equipment like a felt layer, you need to set up the warning line perpendicular to your line of travel so it's at least 10 feet from the roof edge. You need the extra stopping distance to account for the momentum of the equipment. Don't stack materials or store equipment within 6 feet of the roof edge. And never work outside the warning lines unless you're wearing a personal fall arrest system or you're supervised by a safety monitor. That's a trained person who watches workers and warns them when they're working in an unsafe manner or appear to be unaware of fall hazards. The safety monitor must be on the same level you're working on and within sight and hearing range. The monitor can't have any other responsibilities that could distract him or her from the job. On low-slope roofs 50 feet wide or less, a safety monitoring system can be used alone without warning lines. We've talked about the fall protection options for low-slope roofs. Many of these same systems can be used on steep-slope roofs, including guardrail systems, safety net systems, and personal fall arrest systems. Plus, you have two additional choices: roofing slide guards, often called roof jacks, and crawling boards, also known as chicken ladders. Slide guards are nothing more than a combination of roof brackets and 2x6 planks. Refer to your workbook for details on how and when they can be installed and used. As for crawling boards or chicken ladders, they need to extend from the eaves all the way up to the ridge. They're secured to the ridge with ridge hooks. Make sure the boards you use are at least 10 inches wide and 1 inch thick. The cleats or rungs need to be 1 inch by 1.5 inches to give you a firm toe hold. A lifeline or other handhold completes the setup. Remember, this is just an overview of fall protection. For more detailed information, refer to the NRCA video, Fall Protection, It's About Time. Remember, prevent falls from ladders by checking out ladders first, setting them up correctly, and using them correctly. Set up guardrails around all openings and roof edges with top rails, mid rails, and toe boards where required. Make sure safety nets can stop a weight of 400 pounds without letting it hit the ground. When using a personal fall arrest system, take care in attaching the components and never anchor them to a scaffold or movable platform. The warning line system can be used on low-slope roofs greater than 50 feet and must enclose the work area. Listen closely to the safety monitor, especially when working outside the warning lines. Another option for steep slope roofs is to install slide guards, but remember to check your workbook for details. Anchor chicken ladders or crawling boards to the ridge and string a handhold next to each one. You're wearing the right PPE, your fall protection is in place, and it's time to unload materials for the job. You're going to have some lifting and hoisting to do, and some equipment to become familiar with. So let's look at material handling and equipment safety next. We'll talk about the right way to lift, and how to use hoists and lift safely, and the safety concerns involved in using forklifts, cranes, and conveyors. Some roofing workers think they're lucky because they've never had a back injury, but luck has nothing to do with it. The key to preventing back injury is learning how to lift properly. First, you should always warm up your muscles before lifting because cold muscles can be damaged more easily than warm ones. Always check the weight of an object before you try to lift it. If it's too heavy to lift alone, do the smart thing and get help. Place 1 foot securely beside the load and 1 foot behind it. Firmly grasp the object, tuck your arms and elbows in, and hold your head up to keep your spine in its natural curved position. Bend your knees and lift with your legs rather than pulling up with your back. Lift the object straight up and avoid twisting your body or leaning forward during the lift. And keep the object as close to your body as possible. Holding the load away from you puts more strain on your back muscles. And remember, if it's too heavy or awkward, get help. Ready to begin loading the job? Well, you'll need some way of getting the materials to the roof. And that means a hoist or a lift. There are different kinds of hoists, and each one requires special training. But there are some general safety procedures to follow when using any kind of hoist. For starters, all hoists should be inspected daily. Look for frayed cables, broken welds, bent struts, or faulty mechanical parts. Also, check to make sure that the rope is in good shape. A frayed rope won't hold a load. Before operating any kind of hoist, be sure you understand the operating instructions. When rigging or preparing a load to be lifted, use properly rated slings and safety hooks equipped with spring-loaded latches. Lift the load momentarily to check that it's balanced and secure before hoisting it all the way. Always wear gloves. You don't want the rope to slip through your hands and slice them up. When a swing beam hoist is in use, the operator and the roofers below should be wearing hard hats. Make sure guardrails are set up around the hoist area, and never leave a suspended load unattended. If you're using a forklift to load the roof, make sure its backup signals, horn, and lights are working properly. Keep the load at least 10 feet from any electrical lines. Don't use a forklift to move or hoist personnel, except in a cage specifically designed for that purpose. Never leave a forklift with an elevated load unattended. Always lower the load, set the brakes, and turn off the engine before leaving. What about cranes? Well, operating a crane requires specialized training, but you may need to know how to handle a crane load and communicate with the operator. If you're guiding the crane operator visually, make sure you know the correct hand signs. If you can't see each other completely, use wireless headsets or other two-way electronic communications. Be careful of shifting loads when you're loading material and equipment onto pallets for removal from the roof. And always watch out as the crane swings across the roof. Conveyors are very useful for getting large quantities of material to the roof, but they can be dangerous. So never try to operate a conveyor unless you've been specifically trained to do so. All conveyors have an emergency shutoff, such as a pull cord. You should know where it's located in case of an emergency. And it should go without saying, never ride or climb a conveyor. Remember, there's no secret to preventing back injury. Just take time to lift every load properly and get help with heavy or awkward objects. Make sure hoists and lifts are in good repair before using them. Rig and handle loads carefully. Wear the right PPE and set up guardrails around material handling areas. Don't use any equipment that you haven't been properly trained to use. Keep your eyes open when you're working near a material handling area. And make sure you know where emergency shutoffs are located. No matter what kind of roof system you're applying, you'll be using various types of materials and equipment that can be hazardous. We can't address them all here because there's not enough time, and they'll be covered in detail in other roof application training program classes. But we'll briefly introduce you to some of them and talk about one last hazard that can affect all workplaces: substance abuse. One big danger with built-up roofing jobs is working with hot bitumen. There's a reason roofing workers call it hot stuff. When you're applying bitumen, it's about 500 degrees. The burns you can get from hot bitumen are among the most painful injuries you can get on the job. It's also flammable, so you have to be careful and know how to put out fires if they start on a roof or in a kettle. Another fire hazard is created by the use of torches. A torch operates with an LPG cylinder. LPG is highly flammable, so when it comes out of the end of the torch and is lighted, it produces an extremely hot flame. It's important for you to learn the correct way to set up a torch assembly, check for gas leaks, and use it safely. Just as with bitumen, you should know where the fire extinguishers are and how to use them. You'll find ABC-rated extinguishers on your jobs, which means they can put out fires fueled by wood, paper, flammable liquids, gas, and electricity, which includes just about any kind of fire you might encounter on the job. Hot bitumen and liquid propane are not the only flammable substances you'll use on the job. You will also be using gasoline, cements, adhesives, and solvents. But fire isn't the only hazard associated with solvents and adhesives. They can irritate your skin, eyes, nose, and mouth. If you're exposed to them for too long, they can enter your bloodstream through your skin. That's why you have to wear gloves and other protective equipment. And don't forget, OSHA's hazard communication standard regarding proper handling of chemicals must also be addressed. Please refer to your workbook. Now, no matter what type of roof system you're applying or repairing, you're bound to be working with lots of different types of tools and machinery. Hand tools might not look very hazardous, but you'll need to inspect them before you use them to make sure they're in good condition. You'll also be using mechanical and electrical equipment. Before you use any piece of equipment, make sure you understand how it operates and where its most dangerous points are. As we mentioned at the beginning, there's one last safety topic that applies to all roofing jobs, and that's substance abuse. Alcohol and drugs turn employees into walking hazards. It's dangerous in any workplace, but especially on a roofing job. There are enough hazards on roofing jobs to worry about when you and your coworkers are clear-headed. But being under the influence of alcohol or drugs makes it impossible to have the sharp mind and reflexes needed to do the job safely and well. Substance abusers are 4 times more likely to be involved in an accident, but it's not always the user that gets hurt. Your coworkers depend on you, so don't let them down. Your employer depends on you too. Substance abusers are 16 times more likely than the average worker to be absent from work, and that can cause serious problems for a roofing company. Many companies require drug tests, so if you're abusing drugs or alcohol, you will be caught sooner or later. Don't mix drugs or alcohol with work. Your employer and your family and friends want to see you leave work each day in one piece. More and more employers are offering employee assistance programs. If you think you need help, don't hesitate to ask, or get help somewhere else. But don't put your life and your coworkers' lives at risk. Now, as a review, remember, hot stuff can cause fires and burns. You need to know how to use torches safely before you try to use them. Keep flammable liquids, solvents, and adhesives away from fire and heat, and avoid contact with skin and prolonged exposure to vapors. And don't forget OSHA's hazard communication standard. Make sure you inspect tools and machinery before you use them. And don't use equipment if you haven't been trained on it and read the operator's instructions. Finally, remember that substance abuse and roofing don't mix. In this program, we've shown you some of the general safety rules you need to follow to protect yourself and others. There's plenty more safety training to come too. In addition, you can refer to other NRCA safety programs for more detail on each of these topics. Safety is a critical part of everything that you do on the roof. You can't be a good roof mechanic unless you're safe, and no amount of training can make you a safe worker. Ultimately, the responsibility for safety lies with you. It's up to you to make safety a part of every job you do. It's that simple.